Most aspiring entrepreneurs want to just live out their wildest Instagram dreams and own a bunch of companies that spits out money with minimum effort. Well, how does that actually technically physically work? How can you own a portfolio of profitable companies and maintain them all, scale them all with minimum effort? Stick around and I'll explain how that actually works. Okay, so just in case you didn't know, my name is Jody and I've formerly been chief operating officer 3 times, twice at the group level. So the first time I was chief operating officer at the group level, I ran 4 companies at the same time. The second time I was chief operating officer at the group level, I ran 5 companies at the same time. So spoiler alert, you can't run all these companies at the same time without solid business operations. It's just literally not physically possible. You can't start a project and then just throw it over to somebody else and think of it as a passive income and everything will just sort itself out. Someone has to operate the entity. Someone has to call the shots, the day-to-day management of the company, and it needs to be delegated and run properly in order for you to live your passive investor portfolio management lifestyle. Someone at the end of the day needs to deal with all those day-to-day activities. So I was the operator. I was the number 2 traditionally. So I know firsthand what it's like to deliver operations on a silver platter to the chief executive officer. So I was the CEO of all the companies internally, right? That's the way I like to see it. Chief operating officer is the boss of the employees, essentially. The CEO is the boss of the boss, but essentially I am the one in charge when it comes to the day-to-day management, the systems design, the operational architecture, the purchasing, the hiring, the firing. Every expense went through me, every micro decision went through me. And in order to do all that at the portfolio level, having so many different businesses, whether they're interconnected or not, the only way to do that is to run solid business operations. In order for the CEO to run a portfolio of companies passively, right? Think of it as drinking a martini on the beach and checking your portfolio. The only way to do that is to have solid business operations. So it's impossible to just start a company, throw it in the wind, and it'll just work itself out. It's just impossible. There's got to be an operator. The system's got to be solid. The mindset and the strategy and the goal setting needs to all be super tight from the beginning. Because if it isn't, then eventually, if you start all these little projects, they're gonna constantly require your attention, either your attention or your resources. At the moment, I own 3 of my own businesses. This is the 3rd and main one. This is my main business. This is what I do the majority of my waking hours. The other 2 literally pay me cash every month with very minimal effort from the very principles I'm about to share in this video. Just a quick context, I have a little piece of real estate, been profitable from day 1 with about 90-ish% occupancy rate. And then the second business that I have is a food trading business. I started about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's been profitable since the first year with year-over-year growth and solid gross margins and net profit as well. So very happy about that. So let's talk about solid operations because we have to start here. The only way to run a portfolio of companies is to start with solid business operations, either from the operator or from the CEO who understands operations distinctly and clearly. The solid business operations is essential. You need to deploy an operator at each individual company. You might be able to get away with 1 operator, 2 companies, but I really don't advise this. But essentially, you need an operator in each company. You need somebody to own the day-to-day decisions of the company. So traditionally, you could station this person as a general manager, a chief operating officer, or a managing director who runs the day-to-day without the intervention of the CEO, the constant intervention of the CEO. If it's possible, again, it depends on the startup capital, it depends on the geography of where you're at, it depends on the business model, but it also requires you to have a ridiculously awesome team in order for the day-to-day management to work cohesively with the operator. So if you have a very talented operator and a talented team, you put them together and you can get very smooth business operations. I've seen this personally, firsthand, right? The CEO would go and play golf all day long, and I'd just have the weekly stand-ups and explain to them what we did and what are the issues that we faced, how we're solving them or have solved them, and how much closer we are to getting the goals. So it definitely works. I've seen it work. It's very difficult, but it absolutely works if the operator is skilled and you have great team members and the CEO and the COO is aligned with their strategic goals and overarching KPIs. But in order to run a passive portfolio at the top, right, as the CEO, right, how you have a consortium of companies, there is some basic minimal effort the CEO needs to at least succumb to, which is at least review the monthly P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow statements. You'll hear this over and over again in this channel. I'm quite heavy on financial statements and reviews. If the CEO is not reviewing these financial statements periodically, there's something wrong. It means you're not doing business. You're just doing activities that revolve money. If you're really gonna do business properly and you're going to create companies, little projects that hopefully turn into something meaningful, either a profitable enterprise or a startup that goes bananas, whatever it is, you gotta be focusing on the fundamental business principles. And the only way to understand if it's working is to go through the financial statements. Is the balance sheet growing? Is the P&L positive, right? Is the cash flow positive? Why is it or why is it not, right? Understanding this at the fundamental level will tie your strategic activities with the financial performance of the companies. This is really, 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 really important because if you set goals, it needs to be measured through the financial statements. If it's not, it's not a company, it's just a hobby that's expensive. Because I guess the overarching thing that I'm trying to say here is you can't keep growing if you don't know where you're going. You can't keep growing if you don't know where you're going. So growing typically means some form of financial metric. Yeah, sure, there are all these other pieces of data or other non-financial goals that you can target. That's totally fine, like culture and social media followers and what have you. But the one of your goals should be financial goals. And in order to run successful portfolio of companies, in order to track which bet is doing well, is to make sure that it's hitting its financial goal. That's the only way to manage this consortium of companies and keep an eye on what's working and what's not. So if you think about it, if you're running a portfolio of companies, basically each project or each company needs its own startup capital. So unless you have unlimited startup capital, budgeting it out and making sure that each project has sufficient amount of capital to get going and get to a place of momentum. That's why I keep going back to the financial statements and constantly making sure that it's working, is that each project needs the money to survive to get to that point of where it requires no more cash injection. Why? Why is this really important? Because when you're running a group of companies. If one fails, it's gonna need some money. Where is it gonna get the money from? I'll tell you where it's gonna get the money from. If you don't have unlimited resources and access to capital and access to investment, it's gonna come from other companies. And this is where it starts to get really, really dangerous. When you've placed a bet, right? You have 5 companies, one of them starts to fall and the other one starts doing well, it's very tempting to start taking money off the table from that company and putting it into the company that's not doing well. So this is portfolio management. And the only way to do this properly is to constantly monitor the financial statements. Because if you don't monitor the financial statements, money is flying from one company to the other and it becomes super dangerous. The portfolio becomes intertwined. And once one fails and it's connected with another company, then this company starts to get dragged down and then it starts receiving money from another company. It's just a constant shit show. All companies start to falter, the whole portfolio starts to lag, and then you've got a serious problem where your entire portfolio is in jeopardy. Okay, the other basic minimum effort requirement that is required from the CEO is to at least attend some of the board meetings. It's the absolute minimum. You can't just be flying around the world on a yacht and drinking martini without having some sort of board meetings, at least at, once a quarter. just to check in with your chiefs, your operators, the GM, the COO, the MD, to make sure that you're staying course, right? How much effort you put into these board meetings, how much of the overarching strategy you're architecting from the get-go versus how much of it is being done by the operator, it depends. But the point is you do want to at least check in with the board members and the board team to make sure that the operator is dealing with whatever issues at hand and that the company is moving in its right direction. Another handy little tip for managing portfolio is a KPI portfolio dashboard. So really simple, Google Sheets. Every company has its own financial statements. Whoever's producing the financial statements extracts all the key financial pieces of data that's useful to the CEO and for the operators, pull the information, put it on a Google Sheet as a summary, and you can see all the companies as a portfolio, right? So you have top line revenue, the gross profit, the net profit for the month, the month over month increase, the year over year increase, and you have that over the consortium of companies, and you'll be able to see the portfolio as a whole. And you'll see that, oh, this company is going up while company five is going up while company three is going down, et cetera, et cetera. So having a Google Sheets portfolio dashboard is really helpful if you want to manage a consortium of companies in a passive manner. The last and probably the most important thing about running a portfolio of companies is access to capital. I can't stress this enough. If you're going to have 5 different companies at the same time, you want to make sure that you have enough money to get the companies to grow at a certain level. It's always going to require money. So, as the CEO, one of the CEO's jobs is to secure capital, whether it's through credit financing, whether it's through raising capital through investors, whatever it is, selling a chunk of the portfolio. The CEO's job is to secure funding because, okay, fine, you're not going to deal with the day-to-day management of the company. You have an operator to do that. You need to provide at least the resources to the operator to 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 make sure that the companies are well run. If you don't, you will pay for this later. If the company is undercapitalized, it's like having multiple babies that don't have enough food, right? Eventually one's going to die. So having access to a lot of dry powder allows the operator to hire the best, get the best tools, and allows the operator to have a sufficient runway to get the companies to where it needs to be. But let's be honest, not a lot of people have access to large amounts of capital. So you need to make sure that the money management aspect of this, going back to the financial statements again and again and again, is super solid. So whoever is managing the money and keeping track of all this understands how much capital is required to get the companies going at the right speed. Okay, so hopefully this video sheds some light on how to run a portfolio of companies. If you thought this video was awesome, check out the next video as I get super deep into how to actually run smooth business operations at the individual company level.